Hi, I'm Tom Compton. Welcome back to Pursuing the Muse. This week I'm talking to singer, songwriter, guitar player Nathan Graham. Nathan is in the Chicago area. He has recently put out his debut album, The Saint of Second Chances, which is an eclectic mix of high-energy rock and roll, blues, soulful ballads. You name it, it's in there. And it's all got the depth of lyrics you might not expect from a rock and roll album, but it's there. So Nathan has a gift, and I'm really excited to be bringing this to you, our conversation. So we're not going to wait anymore. Let's go right to Nathan.
I lost my mind, searching for what I can't find. It's so far away from my home. Will I be your fool? And I can't help myself. Rather take the chance of you breaking my heart and be with somebody else. 'Cause we've already won. So we've already won.
All right, we are live today with Nathan Graham here on Pursuing the Muse, and I am super excited because this album, Nathan, that you put out, Saint of Second Chances, it's stellar. I love it so much, and I know that this podcast is focused on songwriting, but I definitely have to highlight this album as a whole. So thank you so much for putting this out into the world.
Thank you. That means a lot.
So I'm just going to say, like, to get my point across, like, you come out of the gates, pride is just, it pulls no punches. It right off the bat, high energy, great song, catchy as all hell. And then shifts into Fake Friends, slows down a little bit, and it's got a nice groove. And then somebody else gets really soulful. And when you got to the hook of, like, I'll be your fool, don't want to, what's the exact line? I don't want to butcher this. Rather,
I'll be a fool. I can't help myself. Man, I'm screwing up my own lyrics now. I'll be a fool. I can't help myself. Rather take the chance of you breaking my heart than
yes, yes. Rather take the chance of you breaking my heart than see you with somebody else. And I'm like, right. Oh, this is not just your average rock album. These songs have a level of sophistication that reward paying attention. And then I can't change it. You went in a whole nother direction, and then you get to the fifth song. You've been hiding in your pocket that you're a virtuoso guitar player, because then you pull out, like, the first solo of the album comes, 5 tracks in, and I'm just like, oh, it's almost too much. You're the triple threat. You got the voice, the soulful voice, you got the amazing songs, and then you're a great guitar player on top of it. So thank you for this record.
Man, you know what? My partner Christina, she always says, like, when I showed her my music, she was like, "You are a triple threat," and I didn't think about that at all. I didn't think about, like, she would say that all the time. Like, you're like, nobody is like, people, like, want to do that. Like, people want to be able to play guitar, sing, and write songs, and it's like you do all three. And it was the people that I grew up listening to, because they did that. Like, one of my favorite songwriters is Warren Haynes, and Warren Haynes had a great voice. He had great songs, and he could play guitar. He could, and the thing about it was, like, he could do all those things on a live show, and then when he started, like, jamming with the band, you never got bored. It wasn't one of those things where you're just like, okay, we heard it. You never got bored. And I think that was really one of the things that I wanted to strive for with this album, is that I had been known as a guitar player I was the Chicago blues guy for a long time, and I was a sideman. So it was like, if you needed a good blues guitar solo, you would call me, and I liked that. But it was also, I didn't set out to write a guitar album. That wasn't my idea. I wanted to be like, all right, I have some songs, I have some things I want to say. Hopefully they're good, and then I'll sprinkle that in there. I'll put that in there, of course, because that is something that I love to do, but I didn't want that to be the focus on the album,
Right. Yeah. And I think that played out perfectly then.
Yeah. Because I think like Pride, it starts off and that could have a guitar solo in it. It could, but it has a piano solo that just traces the vocal, and I just wanted to, I'm also a huge fan of keys. So it's like, and I can't really play keyboards or anything like that. So I'm always very envious. But I think that keyboard solos and piano solos are some of the coolest things ever, and I wanted to, we had Mike Mamoni on that. So Mike Mamoni is another Chicago guy who moved to LA, but, he's amazing at it. He knows exactly, his tone for that song works so perfectly. And yeah, so I wanted to kind of, I am a singer-songwriter. I can do this too. So I really wanted to showcase that. That was my idea.
Okay. And now, since you're bringing up Pride and piano and talking about Pride as a song in itself, as an entity, when you wrote Pride, did you have a piano part in mind, or did that evolve in the studio as an arrangement?
I always had that idea that I wanted a piano part. Originally I had this idea that it was going to be an acoustic guitar and a piano, mostly. Wow. And then when I played it for Mike Mamoni for the first time, he was just like, no, this needs something bigger. This needs a whole band. Like, this needs to like push. So I was like, all right, well, let's try it. And we got together on, all the guitar parts. And I was just like, I need a piano solo. I need that like cool, like honky tonk sounding piano, He played it on an upright, so it's like, it has that feel, that tone, where it all kind of feels like it's going to fall apart, but it doesn't. So, yeah.
It does barrel down the rails, and it does. Yeah, it feels like it could go anywhere at any time. It's the hook. It brings you into the record, and then you go in so many. It's just fantastic. So
thank you.
So let me go back. How did you get started writing songs?
Well, I started writing songs, or trying to, when I was probably around 18 or 19 when I started writing songs. And a lot of them weren't that good. They were just kind of, I really wanted to be able to write a song, and because I was just really enamored with the process of that. And then, I did it for a little bit, and I was just like, man, that's not good. That's not good. Like, I have to study the people that I like, that I love, to figure out how to write a good song. So all of the lyrics, I started to figure out that a lot of the songs that I fell in love with were conversational. It wasn't shrouded in a lot of mystery. It wasn't a lot of like, metaphoric things. It was just, saying the thing. And I've always loved that, the honesty of like Motown songs, the honesty of like, anything that came out of that, Polydor Records, anything that came out of Stax, there was an honesty to it. And there was just this very, humbling feeling, when you have that feeling of somebody sitting down and just telling you a story. So once I started to figure out how I wanted to write, it got better and it got a little bit easier. But yeah, I was like 18, and I wrote this this 4-track blues album that was, I hope never sees the light of day. I hope somebody figured out how to get rid of that. And, age of the internet, I'm going to be like, 15 years down the road, and somebody's going to be like, hey, I got Nathan's first album. And I'm just like, oh no.
The demos.
Yeah.
Is that on like a 4-track cassette? Can you like unspool that with a pencil or something?
No, it's on a CD. It's I think I actually might still have 1 or 2 copies left. I don't know. I think my parents
right.
were always kind of, you know,
Yeah, I'll be watching eBay.
yeah.
So let's. Who besides Warren Haynes, besides Motown, what other songwriters do you think were biggest impacts on you? I mean, Motown is a big. There's Smokey Robinson, was like,
that, right? Yeah, I mean, I was a fan of. I'm a fan of Jim Croce. I love how conversational his lyrics are. There's a rapper named Wale out of DC that I really love. Again, conversational stuff. Chris Stapleton, Kendrick Lamar, Smokey Robinson. A lot of Smokey Robinson in there. Nathaniel Rateliff is a huge influence on me. Like, I actually, a buddy of mine actually showed me Nathaniel Rateliff like maybe 2 years before he got into the Night Sweats. And he was just doing an acoustic album. And I really fell in love with it. And then he came out with the Night Sweats and I was like, okay, this makes sense. Nina Simone. Nina Simone is a huge one for me. The vulnerability of her songs are unmatched. I just feel like she can write something that can just, like, 2 lines that'll just tear you apart. Who else? Another local Chicago guy. His name is Nick Tremulous. I love him too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I saw him at the Park West, like 1992-ish. Yeah. He's very talented. Yeah. So, if you're writing a song, do you have a sense of being maybe a certain influence coming from a certain artist at any time, or have you gotten to the point where this is just like that's all kind of in your subconscious and you're going with what you got?
It depends, because there are times where it does feel like it's just there, and then every once, a lot of times though I have to go back and I have to listen to records that I love, again, just to kind of get some inspiration. I was just about an hour ago I was listening to Ben Harper, Diamonds on the Inside, just to get some like inspiration for that sort of sound, because that's I've always loved that too. So there's some stuff that like is just with you, like you've heard, like you've probably experienced this, where you've heard a song so many times, or you've heard an artist so many times that it's just like, you can recite it word for word, bar for bar. You even know the music notes, like where the hits are going to come in, where the snare is going to come in, and all those things. So it's like there's a lot of stuff that's just in there too, that I can pull on and be like, oh, I want. It's like, there's this sound on, Strawberry Letter 23 where there's this like really cool thing that happens. I want to do that, and I don't even have to listen to the song and just remember it and be like, all right, I want to try to do that type of guitar line or something like that. So.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Do you ever have a song that is like you're writing a musical answer to another song? Yeah. I mean, oh gosh, I'm trying to think. There's a musician in North Carolina that wrote a song that he thought of as a musical answer to Rockpile's. Oh gosh, I'm grasping at straws for the example, but it was like, I've written a song that the Yahoos had a song called "What Are We Waiting For?" about anticipation and let's get started and we're gonna go. And I kind of think it came to mind because it just kind of hits the ground running, kind of like Pride does. Mm-hmm. So that's probably where that came. And then I wrote a song, "The Night Is Young," is like a musical answer to that song.
Right.
I went down this crazy tangent for this question of, do you do anything like that? Musical answer songs?
Yeah, I do actually. I do that a lot more for like, to get myself in the mood to write. Cause like I'll take a song and I'll be like, what if, what's the other side of this? I I really like that. I really do enjoy that. And I think I kind of did that with the last song, I'll Get It Right, because I kind of wanted to write a song that was like turn the page, but a little bit more optimistic. So maybe like early on in the person's life, you know? And I thought about, you know, here's this, you know, turn the page. You got this like old like road dog, and he kind of hates touring at this point. You know, it's like it's hard, you know, and it gets, you know, once you start having more responsibilities, a family and things like that, it gets harder and harder to get back on the road, because it's like you're missing so much, you know, and that feeling of, you know, because when you're touring, and this is going on a tangent, but when you're on tour, you kind of feel as if you're sucked out of life, and then life at home keeps moving on without you. And then you come back and you're inserted right back into that. And then like everything is, you know, it's like everything looks the same, but it's somehow different, you know? And, you know, people will call you from the road like, oh, I had the baby, or, you know, so-and-so, we're going to Paris and things like that. And, you know, you feel like, man, you know, it's like, because touring is great and you get to see all these places, but you get to see it through the window of a tour bus and, you know, through the eyes of a venue. You know, you don't really get to see those places. So when I wrote I'll Get It Right, I was like, what if this was turn the page, but 10 years before he got tired of touring, you know? So that was my answer to that.
That's cool. And so with I'll Get It Right, can we maybe deep dive into how you the first inspiration for that song? Like, is it kind of like, how do you get those first nuggets that wind up developing into a whole song?
It was like I was on a really bad tour with some people that I did not like very much, and I would think they probably didn't like me. But I was in like, there's this little town in Illinois called Sauget, Illinois, and it's probably about 10 miles out from St. Louis. And I had this, you know, we kind of had an okay show, really bad night. You know, there was some property destruction. And I was sitting in the bus and I was just kind of like thinking of all the decisions that I made to get myself to this point in time. And like, you know, there are musicians that would have killed for this opportunity, but I'm looking at it like, this is not what I thought it was going to be, you know, and you know, the life of a musician is not what you think it's going to be, because a lot of times you have this idea of like what this job is going to be like, you know, what being an artist and what a musician is going to be like. And there's glamorous parts and there's not so glamorous parts, but you always think about, you know, you're watching your heroes and they got, you know, they have like all the guitars you want, you know, they got all the clothes you want, you know, and they're playing these giant stages and things like that, or even like just stages that you want to play, not necessarily giant stages, but just places you dream of playing. And you think like, man, they got the life, you know, it's like, that's it. You know, that's what I'm looking for. And then you start to do it and you kind of quickly figure out that there's a darker side to all this. There's a darker side to everything, but there's a darker side to this life. And so when I started writing I'll Get It Right, you know, the first lines, it felt like it's that feeling that I told you about, like where it's like you feel like you've been sucked out of life. So it's like, you know, I spent all of my time asleep at the wheel. It was like, it feels like I was going places, but I didn't get to experience it the way that I wanted to, because it was just so much going so fast, you know, that I couldn't really, you know, you're moving, but you don't know where you're going and you don't know how fast you're going, and you're just along for the ride almost, you know? Yeah. And then I put a lot of references in there because I put a lot of references to my favorite songwriters in there, you know, and just writers in general, because it's like I know that all of them have felt that way at some point or time, so yeah.
That's so cool. Did the hook come first, or was it more like the chords? I mean, in general, would you say do you have a sense of being a words first or music first kind of writer?
It's usually music first for me, because that's the thing is like I'm a guitar player first, so it feels, when I go to pick up a guitar, I'm like, all right, I kind of like, what feeling do I want to evoke here? So it's like I'll start playing the chords, and it's like, all right, this feels right. And then I do this trick that I learned from a guy named Jonathan McReynolds, and you just kind of like hum nonsense for a while to see what happens. And I was playing those chords, and I had something kept saying like, I'll get it right, and it was like, okay, well, that's something, but everything else had to lead up to that I'll get it right, because that's a simple line. It's not really like a groundbreaking line, but if you pair it with things that this person feels like they're striving towards something, you can feel the struggle, then I'll get it right turns into a simple sentence, and it turns into like a question or a prayer. Like, will I get it right? Or at some point in my life, I'll get it right. It could be either one. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that ties into even the title, Saint of Second Chances. That a lot of the songs, you have a real humility about, an awareness of where you are and how you could be better. And it's one of the things I really love is that it's so relatable, and it's you're in a struggle, but everybody else is like, yeah, I know that too. And just it's one of the beautiful things about the whole record is that the way the listeners invited in and can commiserate at times.
Yeah, that was the thing. It was supposed to be, like I said, it was supposed to be conversational. So you could feel more connected to the songs, because I mean, even a lot of the songs are not about what you think they are. So it's like, even like somebody else is how I felt about the music industry. So it was like, I kind of personified the whole of the music industry, and you try to get somebody to, somebody that you feel is important to come out to your show, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I'll be there. I'll be at your show. And then, 20 minutes before you're supposed to play, they text you like, hey, I'm not going to make it out. Or, and I had that happen so many times, and it was just like, how do I give you that and make it more universal? Cause I could say, like record execs don't, are not coming out or whatever, like I thought they would. And I could say that, but also if I gave you that feeling, because then now it pertains to, a woman who's waiting for their significant to text them, or you're, whatever, it could be anything. And I wanted people to feel, because I was going through a lot at that time, and I wanted it was sort of like my catharsis of, now I can talk about it, but I can talk about it in a broad sense, and also pull everybody else in that is feeling the same way. Because we've all made mistakes, we've all hurt people, and we've all been hurt by people. It's like, that's part of living. So why not write it out?
I have yet to hear a record executive, so I'm glad you made that adjustment.
What'd you say?
I have yet to be hurt by record executives, so I'm glad you made that adjustment on the song.
Yeah.
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day it'll happen.
So this is your debut record. How far back do any of these songs go way back, or are these all new that you put together?
Some of them are. So I'll Get It Right. That wasn't even I wasn't thinking about writing it out. I think it was like 2017 when I started writing that song. And yeah, I think it was like 2017, yeah, when I started writing that song. And so it's like even like Why and Right One, they're like the newer songs that are on there, but they fit well with the record and the and the idea of that. So I was like, well, we'll throw them in. But yeah, some of these songs, like Somebody Else and Fake Friends were written in the same week. And then, I'll Get It Right was written like way before any of those were written. So it was like probably around 2020 when the other songs were written. And then like Good Honest Man, that was an old song that I was in another band called the Lucky Dutch. And we had that in our set list. And I was just like, well, it's like, I can't give that one up. It's like, I really wanted, because I put it on a record the first time where it didn't really shine the way it should have, because the rest of the record didn't have that subject matter. So it's like, when I was talking about that, I was like, this is perfect for this exact subject matter. It works. And now I think it's taken more of a life of its own, because how it was originally recorded and what we ended up with, worlds apart. Yeah.
Cool. How many songs did you bring with you when you went into the studio with to make this record?
15.
15? And it's 10, is it on there? 10? So did you, when you had those 15, did you have, was there a cohesion to them, or were you hoping the studio might reveal that?
The original 15, it didn't sort of had a cohesion to them. There was a couple songs in there where they fit sort of, but they didn't really, it wasn't enough humility in it, I guess. There was one song that was a little bit too country for what I was trying to do, and it didn't really, and the lyrics weren't all there. Like, it was a lot of lyrics, and it was like kind of verbose. So I was like, this is over explaining, That's what it kind of felt like. And I didn't want to put that out there. And, but yeah, I mean, a lot of them did kind of fit the narrative, but not enough for me to really believe that it was going to fit in this story, And part of me really wanted to do an old school 10-song record, That was like one of my focuses too. I was like, I want it because, a lot of the albums that I love are 10 songs, and, it's like it tells a really concise, cohesive, good story. And it doesn't have to like song you to death. Because there's sometimes I get records and it's just like there's 24 songs and I'm like, man, that's way too much. Like, I give you 12, you 15, but once you get in that 20 mark, it's like that's a little too much.
Yeah, the CD opened up the 74-minute milestone for people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, then it gets to be too much. So, what do you feel like? You were talking about making an old school record. Do you feel that in terms of, is there an arc where like side one ends and that's a middle, and then does it change with side two, or is it all one? I mean, you're talking about the conversational level and the intimacy and the vulnerability. Do you see it as an even flow, or do you see an arc?
I see an arc. So I think, so at the beginning, you have this, so it's like in terms of if you're writing a book, the hero's journey, right? You have this really, it's this call to action sort of thing, right? So it's like, there's this, it's really loud. It's, it was one of the hardest songs to record and to mix, because everything's happening all at the same time. It's like, if you look at the sound wave on a recording software, it's just all one, And so it was like, that was my, pride in terms of how that song sounds. I wanted it to be loud and boisterous and kind of, not really listening to anybody else. Because that's what pride is. It's like, your pride gets in your brain and tells you that, you know, either this person's trying to hurt you, so you have to hurt them back as much as possible, or, you should take that, that extra 2 to 3 hour, overtime, but you're not going to do it because you don't like your boss. So it's like, you're going to stick it to them and, all that stuff. And so you have that. And then you have like fake friends where you surround yourself with people that validate your bad ideas. You strive for the love of somebody who doesn't love you back, and then I can't change it is sort of like that moment of like, I'm accepting the things that I've done. I can't change the past, but I'm going to try, I'm going to try harder. I'm going to, try to do the thing. And then Good Honest Man is like, trying to really plead with you to get on that side. And then as soon as it flips and it goes to worrying my life, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want to keep feeling this way. So let me try to figure it out. And then, right one is finding that person, finding that situation that makes you happy, genuinely happy. And the same thing with Already One is like, Already One is, you're telling that person or that situation that I've gotten to the place where I want to be. So why do I keep like looking around and grasping at straws? It's like, you're there, you're here. And then of course, ending with I'll Get It Right. It was, it's like that, everybody wants to ride out in the sunset and everything's great. But, I love this line that I'm about to say. I love this line. It's from a movie called The Brothers Bloom. But he said that, you wanted to ride off into the sunset, but you figured out that sunset turned into a cold, unknowing night. And I thought that was a gorgeous line. And that's what I'll Get It Right was. It was like, I'm getting better, but there's going to be some times when I'm not going to feel like I'm getting better,
Yeah. I think the Already One is, when it hits, it's so refreshingly positive, that, and it makes so much sense with the arc you're describing him, because your record is it rewards you for multiple listenings because there's so much there. You put so much into it that now what you're describing is taking it to another level. So I'm gonna have to go back multiple more times to fully appreciate this record. But it's just fantastic, because I think Already you could have ended on Already One, and I think it would have been a satisfying ending. But I think with where it went from there, you added some complexity that added some realism. Like, yes, I'm optimistic, and yes, things are good. But then there's like, but what if? It's kind of like those movies where it's the end and then a question mark.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going. Yeah, that's that's the thing. Is like movies actually influence me a lot too, when it comes to writing a story like that. Because like some of my favorite movies, like I don't know if you ever seen Gone Girl.
I do not know Gone Girl.
Okay, so the movie ends and begins the exact same way. You see cool. This, it's a close-up shot of this woman, and she's like laying on her husband's chest, and she looks very lovingly into the camera. And then by the end of the story, there's this like, it's like this, all this crazy stuff happens, and you find out that she's like, stalking this person, and it's kind of, kind of psychotic. At the end of it, you see the same shot, but now you're looking at it with a different lens. Now that loving look looks a little crazy, and I thought that, like, especially, I could have ended on Already One, because that would have been like, I'm here, I'm done. I got it. But that's riding off into the sunset, and you don't see the rest of the movie. It's like, there's a moment when, Romeo and Juliet, if they lived, they would have been pissed off at each other. You know what I mean? It's like there's a side of that story that could happen. So,
Right. It's not the fairy tale ending because life
It's not
isn't
the
a
fairy
fairy
tale.
tale.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
cool. And I'm reminded of like all those Pink Floyd albums that start and end with the same sound effect.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Yeah.
you've got the new record,
Mhm.
and where do you go from here? Are you going to hit the road at all, or what do you have in mind next?
Yeah. So we're doing a few opening slots for people. So we're going on tour with people. I can't mention any names yet because I haven't posted them or anything like that yet. But yeah, we got a few tours planned, as supporting acts and things like that. It'll be nice to get back out on the road and it'd be my own project. It's not just, I'm not a side man, and, so I can do that. But yeah, so in the, we got some summer festivals planned and things like that. Cause we were doing all that stuff, ramping up to the record to kind of get people interested in the record. And then you see the other side of it and it's just like, oh, now I got to keep them interested in the record. But yeah, we did two album release parties. We did one at Fitzgerald's and one at Sleeping Village. And, there was a lot of love there. I wasn't expecting that many people to be at the album release. That was mind blowing, being able to see that many people who I did not know personally, who loved the record and got it and understood it. And, people were telling me their favorite songs on it and things like that. And I was just like, this is great. It's like, I'm really happy that, people have figured out, where they fit in kind of that story and have their favorites.
Nice. And so you're going on the road and you're promoting the record. Are you also thinking ahead? Are you writing at all for a next record, or does it ebb and flow for you?
Yes, I'm kind of one of those people where I either have to have inspiration to write, right, or I really, really have to work at it. I'm not, it's like I'm not to the point yet where I can write like 20 songs a day. It takes me a little bit to kind of, because I have to sort through how I'm feeling and be able to make that conversational, but not make it so overtly and hit you over the head. So, I'm getting together with a few people that I really enjoy writing with and musicians that I like. I don't know if you know Joe George. He's in Chicago. He's a great songwriter. Mike Ramone. I'm trying to, we're going to get together over the winter and kind of like, bang out some songs. A buddy of mine, Nick Hopkins, a really great producer that we're going to work with and just kind of, see if we can get something.
Okay.
Now I got to write a story on the other side of what this is.
Putting pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
Do you have like a phone voice recorder that you capture ideas with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually tell people that if I ever die, don't delete my search history. Delete all of those voice memos. Those awful, horrible voice memos that I have taken while trying to be quiet in a grocery store or like walking down the street, like in my phone, like, trying to hum this thing. Yeah.
Sure.
So I do.
The gift of the smartphone and technology is no excuses anymore for an idea getting away.
Yeah. Go
ahead.
I still write. That's the thing. Like even with lyrics, like I know a few people that like write them in their phone. I usually get like capture the voice memo ideas on the phone, but then if I write a song, I have to like write it on a sheet of paper. Like I can't write in my phone. I don't know. It feels weird.
Okay. Ballpark, how many voice memos do you think you have in your voice recorder right now?
Oh, I can tell you actually. Let me see here. I would err on the side of like probably like 2,700 or so. I have voice memos leading back all the way from June 1st, 2013. So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a lot.
And are those unique ideas, or are they kind of iterations?
They're kind of like iterations. It's funny now that you're saying this. Now I'm gonna go back through here and see if there's anything that's there, because there's some of these I haven't. I was like, and I'm looking at the notes on them, and I'm just like, why did I name that Revival? What the hell was that? It's like so.
It's almost too much. It's like overwhelming at some point.
Yeah.
Is it? Are you hoping that, like, okay, you've got 2,700 snippets that maybe if there's something special on there, you'll remember it, or do you like review it from time to time and just check it out randomly?
Yeah, like if there's so the thing I have about songs is that if I write a chord progression or something like that, if I leave it, like if I get it down and I leave it for, let's say, a week, if I'm still thinking about it by the end of that week, I go back to it. If I like do it and I go back to it, and it's like, I'm like looking through my phone for voice memos, and I see something like, oh, what was this minute and a half saying? And I listen to it. I'm like, yep, wasn't thinking about it. Not good. It's not what I wanted. So it's that. Yeah.
Do you delete or do you keep them anyway?
I keep them anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like if you come back to it and you listen to it again and you're just like, oh, now I know what to do with that. It's like, yeah.
Sure.
It's like keeping keys, it's like you don't know, you find a random key and you're like, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to keep it just in case I find whatever this goes to,
I do have about 15 keys that I don't know what they are. So I feel you there. But you don't need like Marie Kondo to come in and call you like a voice recorder hoarder that needs to clean up or anything.
Does this spark joy? I don't know, but it might. We'd fight over that a little bit.
So, all right. So you're going to be hitting the road.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you get to get back to the voice recorder? Do you get ideas daily, or does it come and go? Will you go like weeks at a time without things going on, or?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be, and I don't necessarily, that's the thing, is like in those times when I don't have the idea to put down, it kind of feels like an incubation period. Like I'm listening to new things, I'm reading, new books, or I'm, watching, new films or things like that. And it's like, those things will kind of, it'll incubate to the point of like, okay, now I have an idea. Sometimes I'll go like 6 or 7 days straight and I'll have something every day. And it's just like, oh, this is cool. That sounds cool. That sounds cool. But yeah, I mean, I'm very, I don't like this about myself, but I am a little inconsistent when it comes to writing. I'm not like, I actually just ordered this book called The Artist's Way, and it's kind of going to show you like, different exercises that you can use to write. So
Cameron.
Yeah.
Julia. Yeah.
I'm excited about to get that. So, I want, because I really do want to be more consistent, and, it's like, okay, maybe take couple days off of writing just to have that incubation period and then go back to it, but not like, because there has been, especially when you're playing a lot of shows, you kind of, it's like being personally when you're running around playing a lot of shows and doing videos and things like that, when I get home, I'm just like, I don't want to see another guitar, I don't want to hear another guitar right now. I just want to get the day off me. So, but I do want to be able to kind of like push through that and be able to still write and work.
Excellent. All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And this album is so great. And you've just made me, and I'm sure more people, realize that there are so many more layers of greatness to it that we will appreciate with repeated listening. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on the road and that sophomore effort that will birth out of the voice notes on your phone.
The voice notes from 2013. Yeah.